Today's video is extra special. I'll take you guys through the emotional journey of how I rescued a sick baby sparrow and how I nursed it back to health. Hi guys, this is Isla, a lifelong pet lover. On this channel, I show everyone my tips, challenges, and journey of how I care for all my exotic pets. So let's jump right into this heartwarming story. So how did I come across this baby bird? Well, my mom found them actually in the backyard, and there were 3 of them actually. And I went out and checked on them. They were fledglings and they looked fine, except one of them was not reacting to me coming near it. It didn't try to run. It kept its eyes closed. It was acting lethargic, and I could tell it was a runt of the 2. So I picked up the baby bird and brought it inside, and I was examining him. I did see he did have a little injury under his wing. It had been he might have had it for a day or so. It was kind of healed, but other than that, he was keeping his eyes closed. He wasn't running away. He wasn't chirping, screaming, or anything. And when I grabbed him, so I got him and I put him into a small container, and I got a small reptile heating pad that I placed under it, and then both of those things I placed them on a top shelf above my one terrarium, so that the heat lamp it heats the bottom of the next shelf above it, so that would help keep it warmer. And then I placed a towel in there for him to sit on, and that's where I kept him temporarily. Have you ever rescued a wild animal or found yourself in a similar situation? I'd love to know. You guys can let me know what your experiences were in the comments down below. So baby birds need to be fed quite often. It depends on the species, but the baby I found was a house sparrow. So what I did was I fed him I might have fed him every hour the first day I got him, or every 2 hours. I don't quite remember. But what I did was I took my bird's chop that I use for them. I took some of that and I crushed it up in a mortar until it was a thick paste. And then I mixed in some wet canned cat food. It's not one of the bad ones that have a bunch of preservatives in it. I used that brand Apple Paws, so it was just rice, chicken broth, and chicken strips. And then I crushed that up also in a mortar, and then I mixed those together, and then I mixed in some hot water to make sure when you feed a baby bird, the food needs to be hot, but not too hot that it'll burn them. So I used hot water, and then I mixed that into it to make sure that it would be liquid enough to be fed to the baby bird. And I took a syringe, put the food in there, and then I would go over and feed him with that. When I went to feed the baby bird, he wasn't readily eating. He wouldn't sit there and gape at me. I had to tap his beak on the side. There's a spot at the end of their beak where it's big and yellow. And if you tap around there on both sides, usually that will trigger them to open their mouth, and that's what I did. And then I would give him some food, and then once he got the food, he realized, oh, this is food, feeding time, and then he would eat the food. It was a challenge at first, making sure I didn't give him too much food at once. I had to go real slow. I do recommend when you are starting off, just use one of those really skinny syringes that can hold up to only 1 milliliter liquid, just so that you aren't accidentally doing too much. If you press down too hard, at least it won't be a good gigantic amount of food that you're putting into their mouth. Also, I forgot to mention in the food I fed to the baby sparrow, I also did add in crushed hard-boiled egg to it. Use more of the yolk than you do the egg white, because that's where all the nutrients are. But that, along with the wet cat chicken food and the bird chop, is what I used mainly in the recipe for the bird food. Next, I'm going to talk about how I gave antibiotics to the baby bird. Now, usually this is not needed. You should avoid giving antibiotics if not necessary. But when I was syringe feeding him the first few times, he did aspirate, and I was worried that he would die, because usually if your bird aspirates, you're supposed to get them to a vet, right? It's because if food or liquid gets into the lungs, they can't get it out, and then it'll rot, and then they can get sick from a fungal infection or a bacterial infection. So basically what I did is I have medications because I got a bunch of birds. I had some pigeon antibiotics, it was just doxycycline. That was what I used. I dosed that based on the pigeon dosage instructions on the bag, and I made that into a big batch of water. I stored that water in the fridge in order to keep it fresh over some days that I would use it. And instead of mixing hot water into the bird paste, I would mix the doxycycline water into the bird paste, mix it up until it was evenly distributed, and then I would heat that into the microwave in order to make sure that the food was hot enough for the baby bird. And that's what I would do for 7 days. I believed I dosed him for 7 days, and then after after that, I did give him probiotics in his water, but that was just to make sure that since he accidentally asphyxiated, that he wouldn't die. But everything ended up all right, so it was good. Everything was good. Anyway, if you're new to bird keeping or want to up your game, my new ebook, Bird Care 101, will be perfect for you. In this quick beginner's guide, I'll walk you through everything from choosing the right food and supplies to setting up the ideal cage and daily care routines for happy, healthy birds. Whether you're a first-time bird parent or a seasoned pro, this guide is packed with easy tips to make bird keeping a breeze. Click the link in the description box below or scan the QR code on the screen to learn more and get your copy today. So I bought the baby bird and I was syringe feeding him for, I'd say, a little over a week. But as the days went on, he was becoming more receptive to eating. So like he would come over and he would open his beak at me. When I was feeding him, he would start eating more food. He would want more, he'd be able to take more. Over time, he started, well, at first the container I was putting him in, I wasn't closing the lid to make sure he got ventilation. There wasn't any holes in the container, so I just like the lid ajar. But he ended up hopping out, so he was having the energy to move around, to explore. After that, I did have to move him to another container where I could keep the lid closed and drill holes into it, just make sure he doesn't escape and go anywhere, because I would have lost him. I did lose him one day, and then I had to go find him, so that was kind of difficult. But after that, he was getting stronger. I heard him chirping, and after I say like 2 weeks, maybe a little bit over 2 weeks, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe he is starting to be ready to be weaned. So what I did was I moved him to a small bird cage I had, a spare one, and I ended up taking my canary. Since I thought he was the most similar looking bird to a house sparrow, I took him, I put him in the cage with the baby house sparrow, and I put at the bottom a shallow dish with the food for the baby and the canary's food. I also gave them a dish of water, and I just monitored him. The first day, he didn't take on, he wasn't eating, and so I moved him back to the box. I left him in the box for a day or so, and then I moved him back to the cage again to try again, and I left him in there. At this point, he was fine with the room temperature. He wasn't being lethargic or anything, so I left him in the cage, and I continued syringe feeding him, but I also was introducing like shrimp pieces, boiled shrimp or cricket or mealworm, trying to get him to eat like more whole items. And then over the next day, I saw him try to eat food a little bit on his own, and after that, he basically was just copying the canary. Well, he was trying to beg for food from the canary at first, but the canary just ignored him. But after that, he learned quickly how to eat just by watching the canary, and eventually he was eating all on his own. He didn't want any more syringe food. So once he was eating on his own, he was kept in that small cage with the canary, but that canary, he has some issues. He's had previous problems with plucking other birds' feathers out, just cause, I don't know why. So I ended up having to move the canary back to where he was previously kept, and then the baby bird was kept on his own for, I'd say, maybe a week, before eventually I did end up moving him into the cage where I keep my finches and the canary and everyone, so that he could be with other birds and that he wouldn't be alone. I thought maybe he would thrive better just with the other birds. So since I had him as a fledgling and he was a runt, I decided to keep him and not return him back to the wild. He probably could have been returned back, to be honest, because I think his flock, like the parents, they live around where I live, so he might have been okay. But usually they say don't release house sparrows on their own. If you're going to take them in to like take care of them, if something happened, they got injured or something, you're not supposed to release a single one because it's dangerous. Like the flock might reject them, might not accept them, and then predators could get them. So you're supposed to only release them if you have at least 2 or more, so that's safe. But also, house sparrows are invasive where I live, so putting them with a rehab wouldn't work. They won't take them, they'll euthanize them. And so basically it's either you can keep them as a pet or you can release them if the conditions are right. So what I've decided is I'm just gonna keep him. I was looking to get a house sparrow anyways, and he does well with my other birds. birds. I don't see any aggression from him. He gets along well with everyone. So I've decided that it'd be best just to keep him. Now, to add on to that, if you guys do find wild animals that are injured, sick, baby birds like I did, it is ideal, more so if you can, to get them to a rehabber. They will usually know the species, they'll know the best care, they'll have the resources, supplies to take care of them. In my case, that wasn't really gonna work because of the species. I am in the US, so if you find like a baby bird and you don't know what to do with it, starlings and house sparrows are invasive, so rehabbers for the most part will not take them. They will euthanize them. So if you do want the best chances of them surviving, you're either going to do the research and take care of them on your own, or find someone nearby who can take them in, who knows what they're doing. And just to add in, I did actually end up acquiring another house sparrow too, some months later. I went into a store to go check it out. I was wondering like, oh, what is this? How does this store work? It's not like a normal store, it's like kind of weird, but I went around the bins and everything. I was with my sisters and we didn't find anything we wanted. So we were just leaving, and then as we were leaving, I look on the ground and it looks like there's a bird on the ground, and I'm like, what is that? So then I walk over and there's a bird laying on its back with its head twisted and its wing kind of out. And I thought like at first like, oh, it looks like maybe it hit its head, maybe it twisted its neck. And I was looking at it for like a couple seconds, and the guy who worked there, he was like, are you gonna pick it up? And I was like, So then I ended up picking up the bird and just walking out of the store. I didn't buy anything in the store, ended up leaving with the bird, yeah. But I took the bird home. It survived the ride home, which made me think like its neck is probably not broken, because if its neck was broken, it would have died pretty much immediately. And after that, I kept it in its own cage. I gave it food and water, and I was just observing it. Turns out I thought at first its leg might be broken because it was like off balance. It was like trying to stand, and it looks like it was having trouble. But it turns out its one wing is actually broken. I don't know specifically what bone or anything, but it can't fly properly with it, and it leaves it drooped. But other than that, the bird was fine, neck no problem. It was eating, it was drinking. So now I've just kept it. I thought it was a female at first when I got it. Turns out I've had it for some weeks now, and it has developed some black on the chest. So I think it's a male actually. The baby house sparrow I did rescue though, I think is a female, unless it decides to develop later on more its plumage, because that does sometimes happen. But as of right now, I'm pretty sure it's a female. But the one that broke its wing, I basically introduced it with the other house sparrow and the other birds, and he stays with them. He's able to get around in the cage. I made sure that I could accommodate him. So far, the wing is still not working properly. Wings are really fragile with birds, so it may not fully recover or ever heal correctly. So I'm just gonna keep him, to be honest. I don't want to release him and have him die because his wing wasn't right, and he was a house sparrow too, so like can't really put him with a wildlife rehabber and stuff. So I'm just gonna keep him. It's okay. I have 2 house sparrows. Hopefully I don't get any more, but if I come across something sick and I want to help it, then I will. If you want to learn how to make homemade nutrient-packed chalk for your pet birds, watch this video next. Have a good one, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!